The glass doors of the towering headquarters slid open with a quiet hiss, but the silence inside felt louder than a storm. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, and whispers curled through the marble lobby like smoke as the billionaire CEO's sharp heels echoed across the floor. And right behind her, holding a worn leather bag, dressed in a modest uniform, walked a man no one bothered to see. Except her. She didn't see a man. She saw a driver. A single father. A nobody. And in the next few hours, that nobody would become the only reason her billion-dollar empire didn't collapse in front of the world. Before we dive deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the hidden strength in ordinary people, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Verse. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The sun hung bright over the city, pouring golden light across the skyscrapers as the day began with promise. Inside the 42nd floor boardroom, everything was polished to perfection, gleaming glass tables, digital screens, executives dressed in confidence. At the center of it all stood Arisha Vance, a self-made billionaire known for her precision, her power, and her intolerance for mistakes. She had built her empire from nothing, or at least that was the story she told the world. In truth, she had forgotten what nothing really looked like. That morning, her company stood on the edge of its biggest deal yet, a $1.3 billion international partnership that would cement her legacy. Investors from across Europe and Asia had flown in, and everything needed to go perfectly. Downstairs, Malik Rafiq adjusted the rearview mirror of the company car. His daughter's drawing was tucked into the corner, a simple crayon sketch of the two of them under a bright yellow sun. He smiled softly before stepping out to open the door. He had been a driver for 3 years. Before that, life had been a storm he barely survived. Losing his wife had shattered him, but raising his daughter alone had rebuilt him, piece by piece. Every extra hour he worked, every silent sacrifice he made, it was all for her. And today, he didn't know he was walking into a moment that would change everything. Arisha stepped out of the car without acknowledging him, her mind already racing ahead to numbers, contracts, and outcomes. As she walked toward the elevator, she glanced back just once, not at him, but at the car, as if checking for flaws. Her lips tightened slightly. She hated imperfection. Upstairs, tension thickened the air as international delegates filled the room. Conversations floated in different languages, creating a low hum of anticipation. The deal was complex, involving multiple regions, legal frameworks, and cultural sensitivities. Everything depended on clear communication. And then, everything started to fall apart. The lead negotiator from Eastern Europe began speaking rapidly, his tone shifting from calm to agitated. The translator hesitated, stumbling over words, misinterpreting key phrases. Confusion spread. A Japanese investor leaned forward, misunderstanding a clause and raising concerns. Another delegate interrupted in French, questioning the integrity of the proposal. Within minutes, the room turned chaotic. Arisha's jaw tightened. She tried to regain control, but the damage was spreading too quickly. Miscommunication was turning trust into suspicion, and suspicion into withdrawal. A $1.3 billion deal was slipping through her fingers in broad daylight. Outside the boardroom, Malik waited quietly, holding a file he had been asked to deliver. He could hear the rising tension inside, the sharp tones, the overlapping voices. He hesitated, unsure if he should interrupt. But then he heard something that made his heart stop. A phrase in Russian. Misinterpreted. Dangerous. He knew it because he understood it. Malik had never spoken about his past. Before life had pulled him into survival mode, he had studied languages passionately. It had been his dream, to connect people, to bridge worlds. Over time, necessity had buried that dream, but it had never truly disappeared. And now, it was calling him. He stepped forward, knocked once, and opened the door. The room fell into an irritated silence. Arisha turned, her expression cold, clearly displeased at the interruption. For a brief second, her eyes scanned him, and dismissed him entirely. But Malik didn't look at her. He looked at the delegates. Then, calmly, he spoke. First in Russian, correcting the misunderstanding with clarity and respect. Then in French, easing concerns with precise wording. Then in Japanese, restoring trust with cultural nuance that no translator in the room had managed to capture. The silence shifted. Heads turned, not in annoyance this time, but in disbelief. He continued, seamlessly transitioning between languages, German, Mandarin, and Spanish, each sentence perfectly delivered, each tone carefully matched to the listener. It wasn't just translation. It was understanding. It was connection. And slowly, impossibly, the room began to settle. The tension dissolved. Confusion turned into clarity. Doubt softened into agreement. Arisha stood frozen. The man she had dismissed hours ago was saving everything she had built. Minutes later, the deal was back on track. Signatures followed. Hands were shaken. Smiles returned. The storm had passed. But inside Arisha, something far more powerful had begun. For the first time in years, she felt small. Not because she had failed, but because she had seen someone she had completely overlooked rise beyond her understanding. She had judged him by his uniform, his job, his silence. And she had been wrong. After the meeting, the room emptied slowly, leaving behind echoes of what had just happened. Malik quietly turned to leave, ready to return to the life he knew, unseen, unrecognized. But this time, Arisha spoke. Not with authority. With hesitation. She stopped him, not as a CEO stopping an employee, but as a human being reaching for something she had almost lost forever, humility. In the days that followed, everything changed. Not overnight. Not magically. But steadily. Arisha began to listen more. To see more. To understand that brilliance doesn't always come dressed in power, and strength doesn't always demand attention. And Malik? He returned home that evening just as the sun dipped into gold, his daughter running into his arms with laughter that made everything worthwhile. He didn't tell her about the deal. He didn't talk about the boardroom. Because to him, the real victory wasn't the money. It was being seen. And for Arisha, the real lesson wasn't the saved deal. It was realizing how many people she had never truly seen before. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, comment, and share it. Stories like this remind us that kindness, respect, and humility still matter more than anything else.